channel. Hi everybody, how you doing? I just thought I would let you know what's on the agenda for today. First of all, I'm still looking for those light fixtures and light bulbs, and so I'm going to pop into a store that's really close by here. But later on, I'm going to be talking to you about another. Well, the series is Missing Kids, but it doesn't fall into the typical category of missing kids. This is a cold case, a horrible crime that was committed against mother and daughter as they slept in their home. And so I guess you're wondering, well, if it doesn't fit into the typical category of missing kids, why are you reviewing it? Well, for the simple fact that it does raise a very important issue of other missing things from this very mysterious case. And it is a horrific case, guys. It's horrible. And it involves a child, too, who was barely 13 years old. And so what's missing? Plain and simple facts. And the memory of the mother has been completely erased. And so she has no recollection of who was the responsible for the home invasion. It was a home invasion. And so I'm going to review that, and I'm going to go over some issues surrounding repressed memory. And so bear with me, and we're going to get to it very soon, okay? So, yes, I'm going to hop into the store right now, and we'll have a look around. To look for more money to spend, although I really need that kitchen fixture. They did have a lot of nice lighting, and some of them were lighting, the kind of lighting that I don't really need. But I just couldn't resist filming a lot of that in the beginning of the clip there. But one thing that I know that I can't resist, I have to use all my willpower to resist the temptation to buy that beautiful lit up little tree. I want to use it for indoor purposes, but I'm really talking myself out of it. It wouldn't be right for my condo, for any room in the condo at all. Although I would probably end up putting it somewhere in the hallway, the entryway, something like that. But no, I'm not going to think or talk about that. So guys, for the kitchen, I did see a couple of suitable fixtures, and it's just a matter of me psyching myself in to let an electrician in, find the right date to do it, and because he has to change the wiring, probably. I can't install it myself. It's a ceiling fixture, and so one of them was a wire fixture, and the other one, which I think is the most appropriate, will be the rattan. It will go with the garden. I love rattan, and it reminds me of the tropics, and so I don't know. Maybe I'll go with something more conventional, like the metal one or the wire one. We'll have to see. But my goal is not only for it to be pretty, but easy to clean and easy to change the light bulb, right? I don't want to go through what I'm going through now with cleaning. There's no way I can change that bulb unless I spend an entire day screwing and unscrewing and not being able to reach. So I think it's best to just dismantle it, because when my father put it there, I had a little bit of I challenged him. I said, you don't really want to put that there, do you? It's kind of ugly and it's hard to maintain. Well, it wasn't hard until all these decades later, and now I'm the one stuck with dealing with the problem. Besides, it's ugly and it's impossible to clean. So let's get started on this little case, which is very horrific. And it involves a mother and daughter, a single mom, and a little girl who was just turning 13, or was about 13, a very, very young girl. And they also had a small infant boy, a 9-month-old boy, who was sleeping in the home at the time. And so there were just the three of them, guys. This was a single family, a single mother family. And my heart goes out to all families who are faced with the same challenges on a daily basis. It does seem to me that home construction is not sensitive enough to meet all the new and challenging needs of today's wacky society. What can I say? What can be done to improve the situation of making homes more safe? That is entirely up in the air. I have no clues or ideas at the moment, but if I ever get any, I will share them with you. I'm not an architect. I'm not a security specialist or anything like that, but it does seem to me that many of these homes should start, especially homes that are being planned and built right now, they should start changing their design, their layout, especially the entry layouts, and mine will come first because I've had numerous problems in the past, although it's not quite as bad anymore. And so, yeah, that's a big one. architecture and construction really need to start to recognize that if they don't change their designs, this kind of stuff will probably continue. And for the most part, I would say that construction companies are in a really good position to target homes, aren't they? Or maybe I'm not saying that they're criminal, but I'm saying persons affiliated with construction companies and persons with the ability to hack into those model blueprints and figure out exactly how to get into these homes that are safely wired and they are equipped with high level security systems which can be hacked, guys. High level security systems which can be maybe otherwise not as dire, um not as necessary as they would be had it not been for that so easy access into the home, um simplified by their mere construction. Being said, let's move on to the case of little Leah Souza and her mother Lara, who were met with tragedy in it was a Labor Day weekend, guys, and Leah was just about to enter junior high. And I know that that can be a very stressful year. Going back to my year of junior high, I was in a panic. I didn't want to go to school anymore. Junior high is a big deal, isn't it? So, this is almost a 40-year-old case, and it occurred on the Labor Day weekend of September the 1st, 1990. And Leah, little Leah, was so excited to she would be entering junior high in just a few days' time. And so I imagine that she had been shopping with her mom for maybe some new clothes. She had probably gone looking for books and notebooks and stuff like that, and chatted up all of her friends who would be meeting up with her at the new junior high school. And I'm sure that things were were going so well for the Souza family, even though it was a single mother family. And so that night, little Lara fell asleep on the couch, and I believe the baby's name was Michael. He was in his crib in his room, and Lara was in her bedroom. It's not known why Leah was on the couch. Maybe it was a habit. We don't know. But it was sometime after midnight. Yes, it was Michael. Sometime after midnight, probably more than one intruder, at least one intruder, broke the glass on the back door of the Souza home. And what happened, guys, was that I think what they did was they immediately went for the mother in the bedroom, Lara. Lara was woken up and was conscious. She was conscious for a while. She was attacked, guys. She was assaulted. And then what happened, probably she was uh, knocked unconscious, and they went for little Lara in the living room. And so what happened was that Lara was, now it's not clear from this story whether she was assaulted in the same way that her mother was. She was assaulted either on the couch in the living room or in the living room somewhere in the house, but she was eventually dragged into the backyard and beaten with a bar. And I know that there are guidelines that YouTube uses to not be so explicit or graphic. And so if beaten with a bar is very graphic, I'm sorry, YouTube, I'm sorry, everybody, but I don't want to cover up the truth. And I want to emphasize the fact that homes are not built securely enough to keep intruders out. more or less, a doorway is meant to invite people in, right? And so maybe we need to have two kinds of doorways. One for keeping intruders out on the outermost layer of the home, and another for letting them in. Two separate doorways, two separate doors. Nothing like that really exists, although maybe it did at some point in history, back in time. I'm not sure. But, something has to be fortified here. Uh, am I talking about a drawbridge? Well, maybe. I'm not trying to make light of the situation, but I know that many homes are built very flimsy with very thin walls and very cheap kind of shelving that breaks as soon as you put a peanut on it. Um, Time to get these construction workers to realize that you don't have to pay $2.5 million, or you shouldn't have to pay $2.5 million for a very sturdy and securely built home. Why bother, I think something really needs to be done in the area of real estate and home construction, but people are not owning up to anything. It's just life as usual. Nothing's wrong. We're going to just keep on doing things our crap, half crap way, and as long as we're making money, that security issues are not an issue. Yes, they are. Although I do think that homes are being built better than they were before, it's still not the way it could be. And that's my opinion on that. So what I'm saying is that at this point, even though a suspect was taken into custody, and I will be discussing him presently, um, nothing tangible ever came out of the investigation of this case. And so I know that there is a tendency that before something very exciting happens, like say you're going on a wonderful trip, an extended trip, say around the world, or maybe to some exotic country in the tropics, I would say that usually something does happen, doesn't it? And so in this case, little Leah was so ecstatically happy. I imagine it might have had something to do with a boy, right? We don't know, but I imagine somewhere in there she was excited about discovering new friends and most of all, boys. And so it's very hard and difficult to contemplate what the motive would have been. Guys, I know that police are very used to using the term random violence, but to me, there's no such thing as random, even if the perpetrator and the victim are not known to each other, right? Everything is kind of planned in a way. It's not spontaneous. Life doesn't happen that way. You have to really be uh, foaming at the mouth with issues bubbling to the surface that are so great and so intense that you can't contain them anymore. That's not random, okay? That's what I'm talking about. And when they say it's random, okay, maybe the perpetrator may not have been known to this family, but I still don't believe that it was entirely random. Incidentally, before I do forget, which I already have, this incident, this horrific crime, this very violent incident did take place in my province at a home on Cumberland Beach, Ontario. And it is a very tiny community, about 135 kilometers north of my city. And it is kind of remote. I believe it had, at that time, a population of somewhere between 400 and 500 people. So it may have been an outsider. It may have been a newcomer, somebody new to the area. It may have been somebody passing through, like a tourist or a camper. We don't know. So it appears that I've been pronouncing the mother's name wrong. It's not Lara, it's Laura, Lora. And police are assuming that Laura did see the face of her child's attacker and murderer. She probably did fleetingly see him in the dark in her room as she was being attacked. Now, the little girl was, you know, she was so brutally attacked, guys, that the mother and daughter both, that all that memory from Laura's mind has understandably been erased. And so, according to many interviews, and one in particular that Laura gave with a news station, she went to very, very great lengths. Very courageous for a woman who has been attacked and having, can you imagine being attacked at night in your sleep in your own home? Well, imagine that the same thing happened to your own child as well. So how do you deal with that? How do you cope? And how do you cope if not to push that memory away, but to retrieve it? Now, it could be that she was beaten in a certain area of her brain that might otherwise require surgery in order to regain that memory. I'm not sure. I don't have all the specific details of her injuries. However, she went years trying to recapture and regain that lost memory from the night she underwent hypnosis. She was injected with sodium pentothal. Now, I imagine, guys, that she may have assumed that it could have been somebody close to her, and that's why she was blocking it out. She wanted the truth to rise to the surface and put that person behind bars. That is very courageous to do, because imagine the horror of finding out that it could have been maybe perhaps a family member or maybe the biological dad of her children. We don't know what was going on. But so she was injected with truth serum, and it didn't help. She traveled to Sudbury, Ontario, to visit a lab run by Michael Persinger, an expert on the human brain. She underwent a process using magnetic fields that targeted the right hemisphere of her brain, which was heavily involved with memory and the retention of memory. And so, she did everything humanly possible, and it was all unsuccessful. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. So despite there being tons and tons of blood left at the scene, investigators were unable to recover any DNA from the perpetrators. And so neither the murder weapon nor any bloody clothing worn by the murderers have been ever recovered. Now, wow. Could it be that they were not looking in the right place, or are they really actually permanently gone? It's impossible to destroy fabric in water. But so, all we know, guys, is that the police were able to recover one large, and I'm saying very large, shoe print from a Nike leather tennis shoe. And it was either a size 9 or a size 10. Now that's okay, it's not the biggest size in the world, but that's a big person. Can you imagine Leah trying to fend off an attacker of that size? And so it's likely that whoever did kill the little girl, well, they targeted this family in particular, not only because they may have had some ulterior and horrible motive, but they were vulnerable. They were a single family living in a very trusted and safe community, so to speak. It would be believed that it was not a very dangerous area. And so investigators believe that this perpetrator was very, very, very familiar with the Cumberland Beach area, and either did live there or frequented the area on a seasonal basis. Now, guys, I don't know about other parts of the world, but in my part of the province, almost everybody here has a second home. One in the city or one in the suburbs, and one way out up north, surrounded by islands and lakes. So it is possible that because it was a home that was situated right off of Cumberland Beach in that region, that it was somebody passing through seasonally. And Labor Day weekend is traditionally known as the weekend where you close up your cottage for the winter, get it all ready, and you probably don't come back until Thanksgiving or Christmas or maybe even next spring or summer. So that's what's typical here. So what I'm saying is long, long periods of time probably passed, if this were the case, uh, before that person ever even returned into the area. And maybe when they did, they were greatly altered in appearance. That is my suggestion, my idea, but of course, nothing has been tracked. And it's not sure what police were able to do to track down the owner of those Nike shoes. And they were known to be, I guess because of the way that the print was found, they were known to be made of leather. And so it's not known exactly what was done to track down any possible owners, because leather Nikes, let's face it, guys, if they were kind of the Converse types that was so popular, and I have a pair of not Nikes but similar, I have two pairs, they were so popular. But Nike, that narrowed it down considerably. Mine were not Nike because I could not afford Nike. But I know that they were beautiful. I love those Converse sneakers. They're amazing. They feel like you're walking on clouds. And so I really do want to buy myself another pair. But anyway, that's besides the point. What I'm saying is I don't know how far the police were able to get with that line of investigation, if they were at all. There's nothing really here that is actually in the articles. All they say is that they came up with one suspect, and I'm going to be talking about him in just a little bit. So hang on, and I'll be back in a while. Hi everybody, I'm back home, and I think I'm going to get right into the discussion right now because I'm not really that hungry, and I'm not going to be making anything for dinner for a long time. I think I'm just going to settle down with a bowl of soup for tonight and instant soup and be done with it because I'm just not up to having a heavy meal or a big meal right now. So that leaves me with more time to talk about this case. And so we're going to be continuing the discussion on Laura and Leah Souza and the horrific incident that occurred in 1990 on September the 1st. And so while there were several suspects under the wing of the police, while this was under investigation, there actually only ever turned out to be one serious suspect, which eventually did not lead to an arrest. But the police were very interested in a suspect by the name of Timothy Elson, a male. And just 4 months after Leah was done away with, Elson did do something horrific to a 17-year-old teen girl by the name of Sandra Bannister. And maybe I'm going to get to that case. Maybe not. We'll have to see. And so that is the primary reason why Elson was under great suspicion. And so a news team discovered that his grandmother lived just down the street from Leah's house. And so, yeah, that's too coincidental and too random for me. So police do believe, although I don't think that he lived at that address, police believe that he was in the Cumberland Beach area on the night of the actual crime. And so what happened was that this man, Timothy, was convicted eventually of the Bannister murder, and he did serve 6 years in prison. And so the courts were actually quite convinced that he was indeed very dangerous. I mean, somebody on the up and up would never have done such a thing. And so they took a rare step and allowed the police to monitor his movements for 3 years after he was released from prison. Now, as you know, a suspect, and maybe not necessarily the culprit in the Maddie McCann case, is actually undergoing the same thing, because police are very convinced that these sorts of suspects will eventually fall into the same trap, and then they're going to get caught. Well, if so, then that would also indicate that the police have very little faith in the criminal justice system, namely the prison system. And so it's a sad catch-22 situation, isn't it? And so this news team tracked down Elson, Timothy, who was then living in Aurelia, Ontario, about a 20-minute drive from Cumberland Beach. And so that is where the police took it. And so, everybody, what I do think is that, okay, even though the police did at the time arrest Timothy for the incident at the Cumberland Beach house, he was eventually not found guilty of that. I don't believe that there was a trial. I believe that that charge was dropped because they couldn't find evidence key to his involvement in that situation, because as you recall, there is a suggestion that there were more than one culprits involved. And so Timothy did maintain that he had absolutely nothing to do with it and denied that he was at that beach area house. the night of the little girl's murder. And so what he did say was interesting to me, not of any particular point being made here, but that he was in the company of 60 other people who could back him up and give him an alibi, and that he had indeed nothing to do with it. So why do I find this of interest, this statement, is because the police were looking for one or more suspects. And it could be very well that if he mixed company with 60 other people, there may have been several other people, if not 60, like-minded the way he was, into crime, into abductions, into horrific deeds. And so that's what I'm saying. I believe that he may have been in the company of the actual culprits who did the deed. Now, also, I want to call your attention to, and I don't know if I really need to do that with a very grand introduction, but that is what cults perpetuate. You go and do this and this and this, and you're a member of our team now. You'll have lifetime protection. So what I'm saying is that probably there was some sort of a spree going on in that area around that time because of a certain type of cult. And I believe that just because this possible cult may have been claiming to be a religious cult, it's not spoken of. Well, I don't know if that's altogether logical. I could say anything, and I could, go and rob a convenience store and then say, but it's part of my religion to do it. So where do you draw the line? Where does privacy law toe the line? How far can you go with privacy laws? I think that people should be made more aware of these specific groups, especially if there are certain types of crimes being committed in certain areas where certain groups are known to be predominant, right? The public should know. Why should they be kept in the dark? Because it bothers another group's privacy. I don't think any group that commits crimes is entitled to privacy, regardless of the nature of their group or what they claim or who they claim to be. That doesn't give anybody any super sort of rights that they can commit crimes and nobody can talk about them. Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to get at. But unfortunately, privacy laws that we have now don't tend to get around that very well. And so ultimately, they end up protecting criminals. The very criminals who nobody is supposed to protect. And I just don't get it, guys. I don't get it. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to go there any further. But I don't understand the law. I don't understand why it protects. Okay, maybe if you're not sure of the criminal or the precise person, but at least make people aware of these criminal groups and their horrific initiation rites. That's precisely what I'm saying. I think we need to know more about some of the whereabouts and locations of these specific groups and the types of crimes that they're involved with on a regular basis. And so, okay, enough said on that. So, that is why the case of little Leah Souza and the horrific crime that was also committed against her beautiful mother, Laura Souza, they remain a cold case, a mystery. The culprit has not yet been apprehended, and it may be that he's not even living in this country. I don't know what the reason for the non-existent evidence really is. I don't understand. If they did have a sneaker print, why wasn't that type of sneaker followed up on? What were the cities? Which cities were selling that type of sneaker? Obviously, it wasn't in Cumberland, right? A town with 400 people in it at the time. So my point is that maybe the leads that the police came with were all dead-end leads, or maybe it could be that the person who committed the crime had passed away suddenly. And so, they are still looking, the police are still looking for a way to solve that 20-year-old, more than 20-year-old by now, homicide case. And there is a $50K reward for any information that would lead to the real culprit's arrest and conviction. And so, the little girl's mother, Leah, says that her worry in the back of her mind is that it will never, ever become solved. And that's a nightmare for her because she has no memory. And so she does hope that one day the real culprit will be found, and what motivation pressured that murderer to commit that ultimate crime. And so also what Laura asks is that people do not forget, even though most of us remain safe from such horrific deeds, we have to understand that probably the population has grown. This person may not live in the area anymore. 10 to 1, that person had moved from the area by then and knew it would be an opportune time for him to get away with something. I do believe that big group of people that were convening on the 1st of September, there's an answer there somewhere. And who knows how far that the police investigation got with those 60 people that they had to follow up on. I would have already assumed that one of those 60 people that was vouching for Elson was also guilty of this. So that's what my implications are. I think it's too big a coincidence for a small, quiet town like that to be suddenly bombarded with this horrific crime, and they catch somebody who was caught doing virtually almost the same thing, but it just didn't happen to be the right one. You know what I'm saying? It's not coincidental, guys. There has to be something in that gathering that drew people like that to this kind of activity. And so I believe that it was some kind of criminal group or a cult. And so I think the answer is there. Maybe the person is no longer alive. That could be an issue. But anyway, guys, this brings me back to the end of our discussion on Laura and Leah Souza. So before we go, and before I sign off, I remember that I promised I would give you some information on repressed memory. And indeed, I have done a little bit of research and come up with the conclusion that there actually may not be any such thing as the theory that memories can indeed be repressed. And so there is no scientific evidence to prove that memories can exist in a repressed state, but they indeed can exist in a subconscious state. And that is why hypnosis is often used in triggering people's memories for important details. And so those who do indeed argue for the existence of memory in a repressed state also argue for three identified mechanisms of normal memory that can explain how repression may occur. Now, bear in mind that this may not be valid, but this is the theory by which a hypothetical repressed memory can exist. It's kind of complex, but try to wrap your head around it. And so there are three mechanisms: retrieval, inhibition, motivated forgetting, and state-dependent, that is mind state-dependent remembering. So let's talk about retrieval inhibition. And so retrieval inhibition refers to a memory phenomenon where remembering some information causes other information to be lost, forgotten. So it is almost as though this repression, if you will, is like an information overload. The memory can't handle it all. So anyway, some doctors argued that for the link between this phenomenon and memory repression, it can actually be, it can coexist. And so according to this view, the decision not to think about a traumatizing event, coupled with remembering other related experiences or less traumatic elements of the traumatic experience, may make memories for the trauma itself less accessible to conspicuous awareness. Now, when I'm talking about this, let's kind of, for a little itty bitty moment, sidetrack and go to all those problematic memories, false memories that the McCann witnesses kept coming up with. And so now do you understand that why so much of that triggered very negative opinions about those witnesses? So keep that in the back of your mind. Any time that we heard a witness say, well, I just don't remember, we have to take that with a grain of salt, right? And so, all right. So these two problems with this information that I just gave you, evidence for the phenomenon itself is not consistently replicated. So when you're trying to remember something, actual evidence for that memory probably doesn't exist. So that's part of the problem. And the phenomenon itself does not meet all criteria that must be met to support a memory repression theory. And so lack of evidence is related, it's strongly related to forgetfulness or memory loss. So lack of something tangible that we can't latch onto causes us to lose that. And so when we're talking about cases like, you know, the McCanns or even Mabel Crumbach and the little 8-year-old boy who was trying to recollect, now we start to see all these problems surrounding memory and why so many stories go untestified, because they can't be backed up. There's no tangible evidence to prove those memories true. And so, all right, let's talk about motivated forgetting. Motivated forgetting is also referred to as intentional or directed forgetting, which is initiated by a conscious effort to forget specific information. And so there was an experiment done, and participants were asked to focus and not focus on certain details and forget other details. And meanwhile, these participants were coaxed into believing things that were not true. And so ultimately, people had a terrible time recollecting things that they were supposed to recollect, and instead focusing on things that they should not have. So that's the human mind for you, right? And so they were completely, convinced that certain things that never took place indeed took place, and they elaborated on that with detail that was a false memory. So in a nutshell, that's what that experiment came up with. Wow. So let's talk a little bit about amnesia. And there is something that is called anterograde amnesia, which is a failure to remember new experiences that occur after a physical damage to the brain. And so retrograde amnesia is loss of memories of events that occurred before a trauma or injury. Now this is very valid. This is not a repressed memory. This is related to a definite injury. And I am almost clear on the idea that this is precisely what happened to Laura Souza, Leah's mother. And so she suffered the same sorts of trauma that occurred to her daughter, who was beaten with a pipe about the head. And so it causes the memory to dissociate, and it actually results in the inability to recall autobiographical facts about one's own life, such as name, phone number, address, things like that. And so it is also related to traumatic or stressful incidences and inconsistent time when the patient is unable to, it's inconsistent time with ordinary forgetting. And it's also related to something that is referred to as successfully stored memories. Now, I'm not getting all of this. A lot of this is going right over the top of my head. And so amnesia is related to a block of time when the patient is unable to recall the traumatic event. And it is always potentially reversible. So amnesia is a very tricky phenomenon, and it can clear just with the trigger of the slightest little detail that can bring back the entire memory of that trauma and everything else that occurred before it. Wow, that would be spooky, wouldn't it? And so I don't think I've ever had amnesia. I have had dizziness and blurred vision due to bumps on the head, but nothing else, thank goodness. And so that is why there are so many reasons to question the reality of memory repression. And it's got a very, very, trauma has a very significant effect on memory and memory loss. And so it is up to us to kind of essentially get all this in order so that we can understand how our brain operates. And so the effects of trauma on memory is that memories are likely to become unavailable to conscious awareness even while they are sunk into the unconscious brain. And so the unconscious state. That is so hard for me to grasp, but I know that it's true. And so the betrayal trauma theory proposes that memories for childhood abuse are the most likely to be repressed because of the intense emotional trauma produced by being abused by somebody, someone who the child depends on for emotional and physical support. And in such situations, dissociative amnesia or split personality is the adaptive response. So, yeah, that's it about in a nutshell. Now, I really condensed that a lot, but if you get my drift, much of what I'm talking about, except for maybe the amnesia, much of what I'm talking about is completely refuted by police, lawyers, and many doctors. So it's not a theory that really holds a lot of merit. And wouldn't you know it, that all these studies that began to come out in the 90s, just as this case was being investigated, did conclude that repressed memories do not really exist. They can exist only subconsciously, unconsciously, I would say, but not at the awareness level. That's not the same as being repressed. So if you can understand that, you're a hero. Anyway, that's about it. So thank you very much for listening and watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.